Good evening. My name is Kadaria Ahmed, and this is Straight Talk. My guest tonight was born to a Kalabari monarch and also professor of medical microbiology in the United Kingdom some 44 years ago. He studied petroleum engineering at the University of Port Harcourt and later bagged a master's degree in mineral resources engineering at Imperial College London. He's worked at Shell, the UK's Department of Trade and Industry, Panasonic and Citibank before venturing into private business by setting up the River Drill Group of companies. My guest came to national political limelight when in 2007 he contested for the Rivers State Gubernatorial seat under the banner of the defunct Action Congress of Nigeria. He lost to the People's Democratic Party candidate Celestine Omehia. He contested the result of the election, but according to him withdrew his petition as a gesture of goodwill after Omehia was stripped off the office following the successful challenge on the legitimacy of his candidacy by another PDP candidate, the current governor of Rivers State, Mr. Rotimi Amaechi. This action appeared to have cemented a good relationship between my guest and the governor. My guest subsequently joined the ruling party, the PDP. Many were therefore very surprised when he refused to leave the PDP for the Opposition All Progressives Congress, the APC, when Governor Amaechi defected. It is believed that my guest is planning to persuade the PDP to give him the ticket to run for the governorship seat in Rivers State in 2015. On Straight Talk today, I am very pleased to have with me Prince Tonye Princewill. Hello, sir. Welcome to Straight Talk.
Thank you, Kadaria.
Thank you very much. Now, your state is always in the news these days. Many believe largely because of the trouble between the state government and the federal government. The most recent controversy that has flared up is over the appointment of what the Nigerian Judicial Council has called an administrative CJ for Rivers State, Daisy Okocha. We've seen demonstrators on the streets of Rivers State protesting this appointment. And many are of the view that, again, this is part of the troubles that Rivers is facing because it is fighting the federal government. What, in your opinion, is going on?
Well, thank you. Well, for me, it's rather unfortunate. There's no doubt that in the current context, you have a scenario where the governor is saying that it should be one person and the NJC is saying it should be another. And both sides are quite confident that they're on the right side of the law. What saddens me more than anything else is the fact that Amaechi himself was really a major beneficiary of the judicial system. But what baffles me more than anything else is the relationship has gone completely sour. I would never have thought for 1 minute at the beginning of his tenure that we would find a scenario where our governor would be in conflict with the NJC. And what I'm looking for really is that when these parties are talking about who is right and who is wrong, what really should be, I think, foremost in everybody's mind right now is not about who is right and who is wrong, but the people of Rivers State. They're the ones who are suffering. They're the ones who are, I guess the best way to describe it is pedestrians to fight between two elephants.
Yeah,
the general, I think it's most unfortunate.
The general belief, though, is that one of the reasons why there is an attempt to impose, if you like, the Chief Justice of the state is because the federal government wants a justice that is friendly. You're coming up to elections. There are things that are likely to happen that may require the intervention of the judiciary. And both parties are looking to ensure that whoever is in that place is someone friendly to them.
Well, I wouldn't want to comment on speculation. I can't speak for either side. But what I do want both sides to reflect on is what matters most, and what matters most are the people of the state.
You seem very good at sort of sitting on the fence and just sort of dancing around things.
For me, I think really the biggest challenge we have here now is not so much as taking sides, I mean, everybody does want
But
to.
isn't there right and wrong? And
Well,
shouldn't people be able to say, well, listen, this is wrong, this is right? In this particular case, traditionally, what has happened is that the Judicial Council nominates, they send to the governor, he approves, or he says to them, no, this nomination doesn't work, can you send another name? But for some reason, that tradition has now been turned on its head, and you're sitting here as a respected person from River State, not prepared to say whether this is right or this is wrong.
As far as I'm concerned, it's all down to opinions. Just as you have quite rightly and very articulately put a position forward that favors the governor, the NJC has put forward a very articulate position that favors themselves.
What did they say? Because I haven't heard that position.
Okay, what they have said is quite clear, that they have the right to decide on who should be the nominee. That the final decision is theirs to make. And ultimately,
does it matter that the person who's been appointed has a brother sitting on the NJC, the fact that there's a potential conflict of interest?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that you would say that. I think, for me, the NJC is supposed to be seen as a body that is above those kind of suspicions. And what I think we should do at this stage is, rather than jump into cahoots with either side, I notice you say NJC on one part and you say the River State government on the other part.
Because that is how it has shaped out.
Yeah, but then suddenly you also talked about the federal government as well.
Yes.
Which should be a third party.
But these are the allegations.
Absolutely. So
yes.
I don't want us to engage in allegations. I think you've just said it. I'm a respectable leader. I don't think that engaging in allegations is healthy. What I think all sides should remember, and I say all sides in that there's a federal government, the people of the state, the state government, River State government. What they really should be doing at this point is thinking about what is in the interest of the people. Now, if the NJC has taken a position that is completely in conflict with what the River State government has done, then the only way this can be resolved is in the courts of law. And until that interpretation comes through, we're going to end up in this kind of a crisis. It's unfortunate, but what I want to remind both sides, especially the River State government, is that demonstrations in the state will not resolve this matter. This matter has to be resolved either in a court or in-house between parties.
Now, again, many people believe that these issues that keep dogging River State and its people are as a direct result of the fallout between, you know, the trouble between the state government and the federal government. You've described as a mistake the decision by Governor Amaechi to defect from the PDP and go to the opposition APC. Why is that?
Well, I'd say for a host of reasons. You have to remember my little history. Of course, I'm coming from the Action Congress. I understand the AC very well. It eventually metamorphosed into the ACN and into what we now see today as the present APC. I understand their motivations too well. I understand also the motivations of Amaechi himself. I've worked very closely with him.
What are their motivations and what are Amaechi's motivations?
Well, for me, the quest to seize power in 2015 is, you know, a very useful motivation. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I would love to see...
That is the job of opposition,
yes,
isn't
absolutely.
it? To try and form government.
I would love to see them doing it the right way and for the right reasons. I think as far as APC is concerned, it's power at all costs. It's power for the sake of power. And it's power without any clear direction as to how it is going to be utilized or used. If given the choice between APC and PDP, I would be choosing PDP any day.
You know, I've had people from the APC sit down and use the same exact words to describe the PDP.
But I'll tell you why it's different in this case. Why it's different in this case is simply that political parties don't have ideology in Nigeria, which is unfortunate. So the same applies to the PDP, it applies to APC. And if you're in power, the only thing you want to see is what is the difference between the two parties.
What is the difference?
And the difference between the two parties is Jonathan.
One has a sitting president, the other doesn't.
Well, no, not necessarily as that. Of course, that is true. But if we're looking at ideology and positioning, if we're looking at what one person or the other party believes in, everything is imbibed in the leadership. In other words, Jonathan's policies, Jonathan's ideologies are what will pervade within PDP. And if he's not there tomorrow, then it will be the policies or the ideologies
of whoever takes over.
And so for me, I have very clear indication of what I'm getting from the Jonathan presidency. I have a very clear indication of what I'm getting from the PDP. But with the APC, I don't have that clear indication.
Well, isn't that the part of the reason for that vagueness, the fact that they haven't still declared, you know, who their presidential candidate is going to be? And therefore, when they do, you may have actually clarity regarding what that person stands for.
Well, what you just said now is actually highlighting the problem. And that a party's definition would have to wait until it chooses a presidential candidate.
Well, it is the same with the party you're supporting.
No, but
the reason they are already defined is that they have someone in place who, according to you, influences everything to do with the party.
Well, you've just hit the nail on the head. The PDP is defined. I know what I'm dealing with. I would not move from the known to the unknown. And I would have thought that APC would have been wise enough and smart enough to not repeat the same mistakes, but to actually define themselves irrespective of the candidate.
They do have a manifesto which, you know, I know they've publicized and which I think is about to be formalized in a few weeks. And that manifesto sets out very succinctly their programs, which include job creation, etc., etc. But you're saying you're not convinced and you think Mr. Amaechi made a mistake.
Yeah. What I'm saying, in effect, is that as we speak now, and you know, you may be optimistic about the future, but you know, I'm an optimist with an umbrella. I believe very strongly that a party needs to define itself. You can't move from the known to the unknown. If you're going to move the political party, the ideology, the position, its ability to impact on the population and the citizenry should be defined. It hasn't done so. I also have spent enough time with both Amaechi and the President, looking at the issues between them. And I'm convinced, beyond reasonable doubt, that the option he chose was not the right option that he should have taken. There were several other options that could have been exhausted. Plus, as a state, Rivers State, if you ask, in my opinion, the majority of the population believe that supporting Jonathan Goodluck should be a major matter. And so I would have thought that the governor would reflect on the wishes of the citizens as opposed to take the road that he has taken.
Now, you're very clear, therefore, in your support of the president and believe he should run for a second term in office. Is that correct?
I do. I believe he should run. I hope that that's the decision he takes. I have described him as the first democratically elected president because I saw, you know, huge numbers of people that came out to support him. I must confess that my anticipation, my expectations were not that high. So maybe if you've sort of aimed this high and he performs
a little bit higher,
you're impressed.
Hold that thought and let us take a break. When we return, we speak to Prince Tonye Princewill about his support for the president and the reasons why he thinks he should get a second term. We also talk to him about his relationship with former mentor, the former Vice President of Nigeria, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. Don't go away. Welcome back. Now, before the break, we were talking about the reasons why you believe that, you know, the PDP is the party that you should remain in and why the president, you think, if he decides to run for a second term, should be supported. Give me the reasons why, in your view, he deserves a second term if he decides to run.
Well, I think, you know, I've always felt deep in my heart that 2015 is not about change. 2015 is about preparation for change. I believe very strongly that the real change for Nigeria will be happening in 2019. And what I will be looking for is a president who can usher in that kind of a change. I think the youth of Nigeria have been led astray. I think the generation prior has let them down. And I believe very strongly that if you look across the political divide, the crop of politicians that we see are not the crop of politicians that will lead us into prosperity. What I think we expect, or should expect from our leadership, is that they will give us a chance to lead. And so I'm looking at a crop of leaders that will be coming up from now, leading up to 2019, who can actually move Nigeria forward. Now, if Jonathan goes in 2015, he has just one term. If anybody else from the APC, for instance, comes in, he has a very strong possibility of going 2 terms. I can't wait for the prosperity and the future of Nigeria that long. I want to see it happening.
But you could elect the person who could begin to usher that prosperity from 2015. Why do we have to wait until year 2019?
Well, the difference between politicians and activists or idealists is they actually think that things just drop down from the sky. A political process is what will bring or allow such a person to emerge. I don't see that person emerging from the APC's framework. I don't see the person emerging from the PDP framework.
So the only reason you think the president, let me finish, the only reason you've articulated to me right now why the president should get a second term if he decides to run is because he will only do one term.
That's one of the reasons. I think it's very important.
What are the other reasons?
There are many other reasons. I've looked at the president and his performance. Like I said, my expectations were not that high. I'm going to be honest with you.
What has he achieved, in your opinion, that makes him eligible?
I think that if I start speaking, I probably won't end, but let me just start by saying very quickly that he has surpassed Obasanjo and Yar'Adua in pretty much every facet.
So I need real things.
So I can talk to you about, say, something as basic as foreign direct investment.
Right.
I can talk about railway infrastructure. I can talk about airport infrastructure.
Can we talk about security too?
We can talk about security as well.
Okay.
Because unfortunately for many people, they don't have much to compare against. I have a lot to compare against. I was in the Niger Delta. I saw insecurity. I saw army, federal forces.
JTF?
And everything, JTF, going after known militants, known criminals, and not being able to catch them. I'm not talking about unknown as Boko Haram. I'm talking about known and not being able to catch them. We talk about the incompetence of the security services. We talk about the ineffectiveness of the security agencies. I'm baffled because I have seen it firsthand. I've seen communities suffering. I've seen communities dying. I've seen communities leveled by federal forces. So when we talk about insecurity, of course, when you lose 276 plus girls,
more than actually, because those are only the ones that are being made noise. That's just in one go.
I'm talking about once. It is horrible, and there's no explanation that can be used to justify it. But I want to get people to think a little bit deeper as to what insecurity really means, how long it's been with us, and how ineffective security agencies have been over the years. It didn't just start today. Unfortunately, the president is the commander-in-chief, and the buck must stop with him.
Because you sound like you're making excuses for him.
No, I'm not. I'm not making excuses for him at all. But what I want people to do is just to take a minute to reflect. Because sometimes in the euphoria of what's going on, I don't get the impression.
But I don't think that these people are euphoric, actually, because people are not happy that this is happening. It's actually seen as quite a tragedy. And the critics of the president, apart from pointing to the fact that he seems to be unable to secure this country, at least relative security that Nigerians are used to, he's also seeming to be a very divisive president. He's the president under whose watch all of the things that have been bubbling under, ethnicity, religious troubles, seem to have come to the fore. And rightfully or wrongly, because he is the president, everybody's blaming him for it, or a lot of people are blaming him for it. Well, let me not say everybody, because that's not true.
I could interject in so many ways in what you've just said, but it kind of reminds me of the woman who is raped and then is accused of being raped because of what she's wearing. I don't think that there's any excuse for the ethnicity and the religious divisiveness that is on display right now. I think we can, if we want, point the finger at Jonathan, but we will be shying away from the fact that it's actually us as a country that need to be looking within and examining ourselves. It's most unfortunate. I didn't support Jonathan in the 2011 primaries. I supported Atiku. But what we need to do is, when the buck has been passed to someone, give him an opportunity to perform. I think that Jonathan, in spite of the issues, and in spite of the divisions, and in spite of the divisiveness that's on show, has done, I think, tremendously well.
Now, I've spoken to. Let me finish.
I need to answer your question if you'll allow me. What really baffles me more than anything else is that in 2011, people came out, they voted for him.
He had a lot of goodwill,
yes,
actually. People did want him to do well.
He's doing, his creditable best. But what baffles me more than anything else is that at times like this, when most countries join hands and say, hey, we've got a problem here. The problem is Boko Haram. It's not Jonathan. It preceded him, and more than likely, if we carry on at this rate, it will be there after he's long gone. At times like this, what you expect the country, politicians especially, to do, you said that no one's euphoric. That's not true. There are people who are actually quite happy about what's going on.
I haven't come across them.
They're quite enjoying the fact that the president looks bad in the international stage. And it baffles me that true lovers of Nigeria, true lovers of the country, are actually quite comfortable at watching Jonathan fail. What they fail to realize is that Jonathan's failure is the failure of Nigeria. And what Nigerians need to ask themselves is, have they truly, in their heart of hearts, done their little bit, their little best to help the president? And if they have, then fine. But I think many of us would be looking back and saying, we've not done our bit to help the president. In spite of your disagreements with the president, in spite of your issues with what you think he should or should not have done as regards security, as regards Chibok and Boko Haram, we need to remember that the real enemy is Boko Haram, not the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Now, two things you raised. You pointed to the fact that he won an election in 2011.
I did.
And overwhelmingly too. So the majority of Nigerians actually wished him well. They elected him and they wanted him to do well. It doesn't make sense that a few years down the line, for no reason, the same people who elected him and wanted him to do well will suddenly begin to turn on him if he has not done things that perhaps they consider either unpresidential or they consider to have let them down. Because I know people who voted for him and who are now saying, did we make a mistake? Some of them have answered the question, others are still thinking about it. Is there anything the president could have done better?
Of course.
To ensure, that perhaps he had more of a momentum of those who voted for him supporting him through these difficult times?
Of course. I'm glad you captured the fact that there are different shades of opinion. There are people who are not happy with him and would clearly not vote for him. There are people who are thinking about it. And there are people like myself who, having looked at it, are still thinking that, well, this is a man that we can work with. This is a man we can support. This is a man we can help. So what I'm trying to do is get you to understand that what the Jonathan presidency needs right now is for people to prefer solutions, offer. He could have responded sooner. Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. He could have been a lot more sensitive in the way he handled it. Absolutely.
He could have maybe not pointed fingers at opposition and politicized it by saying they're the ones behind Boko Haram.
The actions of the president and the presidency will all go back to the president. The actions of the party will go back to the president. I think for me, we can sit down here and analyze all day long. But the question we have to be asking ourselves is, are we in a better position as a country today than we were yesterday? Have we learned any lessons? I believe the answer to that is yes.
But more importantly, has the president learned any lessons?
I believe
because
so.
Even those who wish him well sit back, and I've spoken to some of them. There's a bit of frustration sometimes in saying, well, okay, we understand maybe the initial problems, but now that the problem is clear, now that we know what we're dealing with, we don't see that obvious change in attitude, in the mindset. We're still politicizing this very sensitive, very traumatic issue. We are pointing fingers, and in the meantime, people are still getting killed. And people are getting a little bit frustrated by it all.
Well, I am as well. I'm frustrated as well. But we've got to ask ourselves, what's the alternative? The glass is either half empty or half full. It depends on how you want to look at it. There are lots of successes that have been, achieved by the security agencies.
Not if you're sitting in Borno State or Yobe or Adamawa.
No,
maybe if you're in Abuja, and the fact that, it's been a while since the bomb went off, but not if you are in...
Even in Borno State, there are lots of successes that have been achieved. Like I said, it depends on how you want to look at it. If you want to focus on the negative, of course you'll be seeing it as completely negative, but there have been positives. And what we want to do is we want significant more positives. We want no negatives. If we could avoid any negative story, of course, we'd like to see that. But I want us to say that, you know, in this scenario, like any country that I know, my experience, I mean, from the UK, from the IRA conflict, we know that in times like this, what you're looking for is for all hands to come together to look for a collective way forward.
And leadership.
And leadership. And I don't think that we're having a problem with leadership.
I think there are many people who would disagree with you on that score.
I am entitled to my opinion and they're entitled to theirs. I do not think for 1 minute that we have a problem with leadership. I think there's no doubt that the president could do better, and I'm sure that he's working to do better. But if I was given the choice as to who should lead this country at this point in time, at this present moment in time, let's not forget we're talking about one Nigeria. The president would be my man any day.
Now, so if for whatever reason an APC throws up, say, an Amaechi as a presidential candidate for the elections, you are still 100% sure if President Jonathan is contesting, he will get your vote?
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to understand that I've studied these people quite well. I've worked with them at close range. It's not about media. It's not about how they sell themselves in the media and how the media puts a spin on them. Jonathan is not dictatorial. It is a quality that I think we need.
People of Ekiti will disagree. People of Kano will disagree. Just in the last few days, the use of state security to intimidate voters in Ekiti.
I'm afraid that...
the buck has to stop with him, doesn't it?
I'm afraid that perception in this case is not the same as reality.
When you have national police harassing a sitting governor who is doing a campaign rally because he's running for a second term in office, uniformed police, who should take responsibility for that?
Kadaria, I think if we're going to be responsible leaders, and when I talk about responsible leaders, I'm not just talking about in politics, I'm talking about across the sphere, whether it be business, whether it be media. We need to look beyond moments and make assessments over time. I'll say this, and I'll say it without going into too much detail because I don't want to come here to bring anyone down. Basically, the idea is to move the country forward. But if we're talking about dictatorial tendencies, if we're talking about people who have used this political office and the state apparatus to impose their will on people, we would be looking at a long list of people, including names that have just been mentioned, and Jonathan would not be on the top of that list. Now, unfortunately for us, one incident is one incident too many. But I always want people to think and reflect on if you take away A and you bring B, you want to be making progress. I complained about Obasanjo and complained bitterly about Obasanjo. He leveled Odi, a community, to the ground. Over 5,000
and was criticized for it.
And was criticized for it. We didn't see any of that from Jonathan. We saw it from Yaradua. Yaradua also leveled another community. He leveled Baramatu. An incident which made me resign from my position as the chairman of the Niger Delta Subcommittee on the Vision 2020. Now, Jonathan comes in. Of course, you'll have isolated cases. People can point the finger at the presidency. I'm not saying they shouldn't.
There are those who believe that
but let me just
people close to him are behind some of the incidents of Boko Haram.
Let me land on this by saying that what we should do is condemn all of these instances when they occur. But I will still come down to the position where, if asked, amongst these array of politicians, including Amaechi for president, he wouldn't get my vote. Because I know that as an individual, he would do a significantly worse job than Jonathan has done.
What about your former mentor, political friend, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar? If he goes up against President Goodluck Jonathan, if he gets the APC ticket, who will you vote for?
Well, to be honest with you, Atiku would represent what I think would be a greater challenge, not Amaechi. Atiku would present a greater challenge to the Jonathan presidency than Amaechi ever would. And I've looked at the array of politicians on the other side, and I say the same thing, that Atiku is probably heads and shoulders above the rest of them. But, I don't think I'll be in the position to make that choice because I don't think the APC would give him the ticket because of the kind of people they are and where they're going. But importantly, I think at a time like this, where we need collaboration between the North and the South, especially, I think that it would be the worst time for a president from the North to come and take the seat from a president from the South. I think that what Atiku should have been doing, and this was my advice to him, which obviously he didn't take, is stretching the hand across the Niger to say, let me help my brother, let him finish his term, his second term, if he chooses to run. Let the North show support for the South. Because the North not showing support for the South, and the South not showing support for the North, is the catalyst for both the religious and the ethnic kind of divides that we're seeing today. We need to see more people from the North stretching their hand across to people from the South. A president from the South needs to get more love from the North, and of course, vice versa, it will be reciprocated in due course.
Are you still in touch with former Vice President Atiku Abubakar? Do you still talk?
Not regularly, not definitely as regularly as I'd like, but you know, he's taken a path, and I think he's an adult, he's an experienced politician, and in spite of advice that came from the likes of myself, for him to support the president as much as he could, and to be fair to him, he tried, and I would give him credit for making the attempt, but I would have loved him to have tried a little bit harder. But he's chosen to go the path he's chosen to go down, and we're in an election season, so I don't want to interfere with their day-to-day activities. I'm going about mine, and I've allowed him go about his.
Now, let's take a break. When we come back, we speak to Prince Tonye Princewill about his rumored ambition to run for the office of Governor of Rivers State in 2015. Join us after the break. Welcome back. So, can I ask you if you will definitely be seeking the PDP ticket to run for elections in Rivers State as governor next year?
Look, you use the word definitely. I'm a little cautious about absolutes. It's very likely. Currently, I have an exploratory committee working on that. They're going to be advising me on the viability of my candidacy. And when they do so, I'll let the Rivers people and, of course, the Nigerian public know what my final decision would be. But it's beyond just my ambition. What I'm interested in really is what's the ambition of Rivers people? What kind of Rivers State do they want? Do they want a Rivers State that is seated in factional, party political rancor, or are they looking for a Rivers State where people are looking to bring people together and move the state forward?
Is that the Rivers that you want to lead?
Absolutely. I think that what will happen in 2015 will probably be a shift from the norm, and that people will not be looking at party, they will be looking at candidate, and they will be looking at where the person is going as opposed to where the person is coming from. So that's the kind of River State that I want. I think it's the right time. 2007 was probably a test run. A lot of lessons have been learned from 2007.
Maybe a bit too young, a bit too naive politically?
No, I wouldn't say. I think I was very clear as to where I wanted to go. I was also very clear about the challenges. But you know, we had financial limits. We couldn't raise enough money, and very few people would bet on a green one.
Have you got a fat campaign purse now? Is that what it is?
Well, I wouldn't call it fat, but I would say that it's potentially medium-sized. And so to that extent, if I did or if I could be given the ticket to run, then I would mount something significant.
Now, you talked about viability and getting people to sort of find out whether your candidacy is something that is viable. Many say basically you believe you've shot yourself in the foot by not following Governor Rotimi Amaechi at the APC, where you would have more or less been guaranteed a ticket, and point to the closeness between Mr. Wike and President Jonathan as almost certain guarantee that he will get the PDP ticket. What are your thoughts on this, permutations that people are making?
No, I mean, I listened to what you've just said, and you talked about the APC ticket as guaranteed, and then you talked about the Wike ticket for PDP as almost guaranteed. It's quite interesting how you put it. But
well, it's what people are saying, I'm telling you.
Well, listen, you know, who are people? I mean, people say a lot of things, and unfortunately we can't define them. But to me, my view on this is very clear. If I do decide to go for the PDP ticket, I'm pretty confident that I'll get it. It's based on a lot of things, some of which we can't speak about here. But I feel much more comfortable, not just about getting a ticket, but getting a ticket I believe in. I think it's possible to run for office without bringing Jonathan down. I wouldn't be comfortable. I think that Jonathan deserves a second chance. I think Jonathan deserves a second term. And I would love to run under a platform that allows him that, as opposed to a platform that doesn't. In fact, I think the ambition of the president is a lot more important than mine. So if going to PDP means losing the ticket, I'd much rather do that. I'm a conviction politician. I don't go just because of what is in my interest. If it wasn't that, then I would not be withdrawing my case from the tribunal in support of Amaechi. I believe that it's not all about your personal ambition. It should be about conviction. And for someone who didn't believe in Jonathan as much as many others did, to stand here or sit here and say that I'm prepared to stand by him through thick and thin, is simply because of the conviction of it. And that is what drives me.
Now, I don't know you much, but the little that I've seen and heard of you since I started pursuing you for this interview seem to actually indicate a clear intention to run for political office, because you seem quite prepared. Even as we talk here, you've got your own media team who, are taking pictures, and I'm sure it's all to do with documenting everything that you do. You've got foundations that are doing some very good work, I understand, in River State, looking after people. So all of it seems to be geared towards, guiding you towards some sort of political office, and yet you sit and say, well, actually, maybe not, because the president is more important than I am.
Well, he is, and I think that my love for people goes beyond and stretches beyond River State. I'm sure we're going to talk about the charities, but lots of them are touching people in other parts of the country. I mean, the winning orphanage for my Melody Shelters program was from Kogi State, and they went home with 10 million naira. So, for me, it's touching as many people as possible. It's not just about River State. So I'm keen to see Nigeria move forward. And I wouldn't want to see River State move forward and Nigeria move backward.
So articulate what your vision is for River State.
My vision for River State is as a place where people have opportunity galore, where jobs are created, where visitors feel safe and secure, where the citizens feel at home, where mediocrity does not reign, and where effort is rewarded. A just society, a fair society. There are a couple of phrases that people know me by the billboards we have up in Port Harcourt, and one of them is that politics is too important to be left to politicians. Politics, in my opinion, is one of the easiest careers you can get involved in. You don't have to be super intelligent. You don't have to wake up first thing in the morning. You don't even have to do much reading.
But you've been quoted as saying you don't have much respect for the way politicians in Nigeria practice politics.
Is that a surprise?
Well, you should explain what you mean.
Absolutely no, I don't.
I'm asking the question.
We are in a country where we are the result, a sum total of our politics. And so our politics got us to this place. I think we could do a lot better. I am quietly confident that with Jonathan at the helm, we can get more credible people to line up behind him. I wish we could get much more credible people in his cabinet, in his team. But you only work with what you have. And if most of the people who are intelligent, smart, very forward-thinking are throwing stones and lobbing stones at him, obviously that's not a prerequisite for getting involved in his cabinet or his team.
Maybe he needs to reach out. And
I think he does. But like I said, it needs to be both sides. Someone like Atiku, with all the experience and the wealth of knowledge that he has, I would have loved it if he was one of those people helping the president at the moment. But that's not the case. So we can only deal with what we have. We can only work with what we have. And my hope is that we'll move the country forward and attract more people to help the president succeed.
When will we know whether you're running for office next year or not? What is the sort of cutoff point?
Oh, I think it would be very soon.
Because very,
Yeah, it will be very soon. I've already received a midterm report from the exploratory committee because I'm anxious as well to hear from them. And It's sounding so far quite positive.
Now, I understand you do quite a lot of charity work using a foundation and some other organizations. Talk to me a little bit about the charity work that you do. What exactly does it entail?
Well, when I came back to Nigeria, I was in the UK for a long time, and I came back to Nigeria, and there was a huge difference between what it was in 1991 when I left, in 2001 when I started to sort of make my way back, and I couldn't cope with the difference. It was annoying, and you would help one person here, you'd help one person there. It was quite ad hoc, and I thought I'd institutionalize it. I thought I'd make it a little bit more organized, do something that was sustainable, was beyond just sentimental, reach out to the closest person to you. There must have been people out there who didn't have the access to you, who also needed help. And so I started off with scholarships. In the immediate kingdom, my father's kingdom, and expanded beyond that, and slowly started to get involved in other things.
How many scholarships do you give out annually?
It's about 100. Sometimes.
What level of education?
University education.
University, yeah. Okay.
And so we've sort of reached people who are abroad studying. Most of them are in Nigeria. And
this scholarships, like you said, you started with the immediate kingdom that your father was. Has it now stretched beyond that, or the scholarships are still for that particular area?
No. It's now across the whole state. All the 23 local governments of the state have been doing it for several years now. And I'm hoping that we can go to national and international organizations to say that, hey, look, this is what we've done with Princewill's Trust. Help us as well.
Thank you very much, Prince Tonye Princewill, for being a guest on the program.
Thank you, Kadaria. It's a pleasure as well.
Thank you. You've been watching Straight Talk with me, Kadaria Ahmed, and my guest was Prince Tonye Princewill, with whom I discussed the troubles in Rivers State, the reasons why President Jonathan deserves a second term in office, and Prince Tonye's own rumored ambition to be the governor of Rivers State next year. Join me again next week when I'll be here speaking to another interesting and special guest. Have a very, very good evening.